something of his Spirit. And that we come into this world with the seed of these very qualities within us. And we could either kill them, stunt them, as the Quran says, or cause them to grow. And when we grow in these, we grow in our ability not just to experience tremendous beauty in life through all this, but we grow in our ability to receive and experience the infinite beauty, the infinite peace, the infinite truth, the infinite compassion, the infinite mercy, the infinite, etc., all the way down the list, that only comes from the infinite perfect source of all these. The more we grow in mercy, the more we grow in our ability to receive and experience in this life and in the next, to an infinitely greater degree, the mercy of God. The more we grow in compassion, the more we grow in our ability to receive and experience God's compassion in this life through prayer and through ritual and through contemplation and through other experience of others. And of course, infinitely more in the next life, the compassion of God. The more we grow in our truthfulness, the more we grow in our ability to experience God, the truth, because all truth comes from God. The more we grow in these things, the more we grow in our ability to receive and experience God's attributes of perfection. The more we grow in our ability to receive and experience His being. And that sort of nearness we are growing to Him is tied to our essential nature and to His. It's more than just physical nearness. It's more than just a convergence of ideas. It's more than just a convergence of feelings. It's a convergence of essential beings. It's the closest type of nearness two can feel, two can experience. I'll just give you a quick analogy, because this helped my children. Let's pretend I have a goldfish, a dog, and 3 children. 3 daughters, let's say. And I do have 3 daughters. No matter how much of my love, compassion, forgiveness, caring I pour upon that goldfish, it could only experience it to a tiny degree. It might not even really be aware of it, because it's a very primitive creature. But my dog, on the other hand, when I show it all my kindness, all my love, all my compassion, all of what is essentially me, it can experience it to a much higher degree than my goldfish. And through its interaction with me, through its own trying to give its own self to me, we could experience a quite wonderful relationship. But my children, especially as they grow older and go through their own experience and their own development, could receive and experience all the love and the compassion and the forgiveness and the caring and the generosity and the protection, everything I have to offer. They could experience my being to a much higher degree than my dog ever can. And we could have a relationship of beauty that I could never have with my dog. As much as I love animals, having had 3 daughters, I know that the relationship that you have with 3 beautiful daughters could never even come close. No other relationship could approximate that. Of course, my relationship with my wife is also extremely beautiful, and she might hear this. And she's a wonderful woman, really. I mean, she's the source of so much beauty. But, okay, Madam Chairman, I am ready. So that seems to bring it all together. So now, I thought, wait a minute. That doesn't explain this. Why the intellect? Why the choice? Why the suffering? I thought, you almost had me, this Quran. You almost duped me. You almost tricked me, seduced me into accepting this philosophy. But wait a minute. What about intellect, choice, suffering? Why do we have to experience these? Why couldn't you just programmed us to be merciful, compassionate, forgiving, etc.? Why do we have to go through all this? And then, of course, the answer came to me as quickly as I thought of it. So we are creatures, and we grow, and we become. And yes, and you could make us anything you want, but you can't contain any of those attributes I listed without these 3 things. In mathematics, we try, 3 premises that go into, proving a theorem. We try to see if we could take one of them away, and if it's essential. And all 3 of these are definitely essential. For example, you could program a computer never to make an incorrect statement, but it doesn't become a truthful computer. Never heard anybody say to me, Jeff, this Macintosh is the most truthful computer I ever saw. If it's programmed, it's not truth. You could program a CAT scan to help the sick, but it doesn't become compassionate. Never heard a doctor say, Jeff, if you want to see a compassionate CAT scan, you come right over here. Right? Because all those things, compassion, forgiveness, truth, caring, love, all are born out of choice, suffering, and reason. In order to do a compassionate deed, when we consider reaching out to someone in compassion, that person, first of all, that's inconceivable without the presence of suffering, an environment where there's suffering. And when we decide to help them or not, we reason in our minds, what is this going to require of me? It's going to require some suffering on my part, some of my giving of myself. And without that mental process, it doesn't become a compassionate deed. And if it isn't by choice, it's not a compassionate deed. It's that choice that makes it compassionate. Same thing with truth. Truth is a choice between telling the truth or not telling the truth. Oftentimes we tell it when we're at risk to our own personal loss. The more suffering that might come out of that choice, the greater is the truth behind it, the greater the act of truthfulness. And all the time we have to weigh the consequences of that choice. If I tell the truth here, my teacher's going to give me an F. If I don't tell the truth, I might get an A. We weigh it in our mind. Last example, the famous wedding vow. Do you take this woman to be your wife in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, until death do you part? What are they asking us? Do you knowingly make this choice, understanding full well what's at stake here? That it might involve richness but poverty, health or sickness, that suffering's going to be involved until death. Once a young lady told me, you never really loved me. Because when the growing got tough, when things got hard, when we hit rock bottom, when my life fell apart, you just got up and left. And she was right. And she understood full well that that's what love is all about. It is through giving and suffering together and hanging in there with each other and not bailing out and persevering through suffering, making that choice and knowing what you're doing. All those three things are essential. So it's very easy to see why the Quran stresses these. For in order for us to grow in these, I dropped it, we have to have these. And that's why it's very easy to see, ladies and gentlemen, why the Quran, 30 seconds, Madam Chairman, why the Quran talks about sin as self-destruction. The Quran says when we sin, we commit, the Arabic word is dhulm, or zum, however dialect you have. Dhulm against ourselves. We oppress, we destroy ourselves. Because when we don't grow in these, when we grow in the very opposite of these, we are literally destroying ourselves. When we grow into the things that are antithetical to these, we are destroying our natures and will not allow ourselves to receive and experience the beauty that could be in store for us this life and the next. It's like coming into this world and developing in the womb none of the physical things you need to experience comfort and joy and peace and happiness on a physical level in this life. It's as if you're coming into this life and you've destroyed yourself physically somehow in the womb, and you came into it and you had nothing to protect you from the cold, from the heat, from the harshness of the elements, from germs, from disease, nothing to protect you, nothing to satisfy, give you the ability to satisfy your thirst or your hunger, nothing for you to experience any physical comfort. This is all that matters as we go into the next life. If we don't develop these through our relationship with God, our very purpose of our being, then we will experience terrible suffering in this life, worse than if we came into this life in a physical state that didn't avail us of any of the comfort of this life. And so it'll be worse than fire. It'll be worse than endless fire. It'll be worse than the worst hell we could possibly imagine. So the Quran tells us, that yes, when it talks about heaven and hell, it's used very powerful symbolic language, but what it essentially is telling us is imagine the greatest joy and wonder and peace and serenity you could ever experience, and that's what's open to you on the one end. But on the other end, imagine the most terrible suffering that you could possibly bring on yourself, and you could also do that to yourself as well. It'll be worse than anything you could have ever imagined. And the Quran tells us that God says on the Day of Judgment, I did not harm you in the least. You destroyed yourselves. And it could say that in total objective truth. And that's why the Quran, well, I think I'll leave it at that because Madam Speaker is about to shoot me. I still have other things to talk about, but I want to find out how that basketball game is going. So thank you so much for listening to me for so long. And may the peace and mercy of Allah be upon you all. I didn't mean to try to scare anybody at the end. That wasn't my goal. I was just trying to make a point. And may the peace and mercy of God be upon you all. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
All right, we'd like to thank Dr. Lang for that very heartfelt, very long presentation. I have a few things to say before you all leave, so just be patient with me for a second.